Hey everyone, welcome to NASCAR on NBC. Marty, Snider, Parker, Kligerman joining you here after Austin Cindric's surprise and big win at Worldwide Technology Raceway. But Parker, I kind of want to deal with his teammate Ryan Blaney first. He runs out of fuel with a lap and a half to go. How in today's modern age does that happen?
A lot of factors go into it, as you know, Marty. It's the fuel time. So that's a big deal in the next gen car, considering you can change the tires faster than you can fill the actual race car. So how long you keep plugged in with that can or going to the second can is a big deal. And it's, a lot of these teams have scienced it out, as you and I have been on pit road and experienced over the last couple of years, as to how much they've scienced it out to the last nth degree, that last tenth of a second to try and make these stops faster. And it all builds into the strategy. And it looked like, that 12 team had called it correctly. They short pitted the two. They end up coming out in front of him. They leapfrog him. But if you look at that can there, how long it's in, if you go to a second can, and also do you get it all the way full, are all the questions that these teams always have. And it looks like they just maybe didn't have enough fuel there and sort of caught themselves off guard and had done everything right. But you can't count a win in this series, as you know, until you get to the checkered flag, and it just didn't quite work out for the 12.
Yeah, I guess the surprise is, would they not have figured that out earlier in the run and said, hey, maybe save us a little bit. We're not sure we got it quite full.
That's what I was wondering too, and I think you and I have been on there and seen how they go about weighing the cans and understanding how much fuel went actually into the race car and that sort of thing. So I don't know what caught them off guard. I'm sure they're dissecting it as we speak, obviously, as these teams get back and they go through everything from the weekend and they look at all the data they possibly can to say, okay, where did this go awry? Why did we not have the numbers to back this up, right? Why, to your point, why couldn't we have told Ryan to back it off? He had a 2-second lead or 2.5-second lead at one point there that he easily could have been saving fuel and, sort of getting them a fuel number that they needed. So I think that's something that, Hassler and that whole team are going to have to go back and dissect and understand, where did we not see this situation and, understand how to not have that happen again in the future, because they had that win in hand. It was with a commanding lead and the ability to maybe just get one more lap of fuel over that whole run. I think that's entirely possible. So they just, didn't get the numbers right.
Yeah, and I go back to what Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney said after the race. You don't get those shots very often to have a win like really both of them had in hand at St. Louis. So let's go to the guy that did win the race, Austin Cindric. And talking in reality here, I think you can make a fair case. He's been the third fastest Team Penske car. Is there a way to quantify a season saver, a career, not a career saver, but a season saver, maybe, Parker, for Austin Cindric to be able to pull out this win somehow?
Oh, I mean, what is confidence for a race car driver? It's the secret sauce, right? And Austin has been through a lot of tough times in the last, 8-9 months. He and I have talked about it back at Chicago last year. I went and had lunch with him and we just sat down and, talked about what he was going through as a young driver in the Cup Series, who obviously had a big win, the Daytona 500, but wasn't having the success at other places and was searching for that, right? And you have to do whatever you can to keep your confidence, but there's nothing in the world quite like winning a race for a race car driver's confidence. And it's an odd deal. You can believe so internally that you can do it. Your whole team can believe you can do it, but until you cross that finish line first, there's just something that changes when you actually go about doing it and proving that you can win. And I think on this weekend, considering how fast he was in qualifying, stayed up front the whole time, executed throughout the entire race, and put themselves in position to win that race when the 12 had their issue. I think that's a really big confidence booster as well, because, this isn't, something where they use strategy to get track position, that sort of thing. He was just up front the entire time and was there when, the opportunity was presented in front of him. So I think that's a big deal. And to answer your question, can you quantify it? No, you can't quantify any of this stuff. But when it comes to, the mental side of this game and the confidence and that sort of thing. But I think the other side of this is you look how fast those Team Penske cars were this weekend. You get the confidence that he has now and that race team has, and knowing they can win. I think this could just be the start of a real run in the summer. And I think it's a very positive thing for Team Penske overall to have the speed that they had amongst all their cars.
Yeah, I think honestly, talking to some folks in the Ford camp, they're not sure why they were fast this weekend and not fast at mile and a half, but it's almost like they had to take advantage of that type of track, Parker. Like, this is the type of track where they can win. So they have to go in with the mentality. We have to do it this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, look at McDowell, right? Wins the pole, was very fast early on. Obviously, they have the affiliation with Team Penske. I think there's things that they're going to have to extrapolate from this. Now, Christopher Bell did look like the maybe the fastest car on that day, even with all the speed that the Fords had. So it's definitely, one of those things as we go through this next gen era, a lot of these teams are figuring out is what is the levers that create performance, right? And how do you quantify those levers, and where do you utilize them and apply them to other racetracks? And I think that is something that, the teams that have had to find some of that speed compared to the Joe Gibbs and the Hendrick that was doing so well earlier this season. That is something that is all a learning process. And as we continue to evolve in understanding this race car, as we talked about strategy earlier, right, that has entirely changed for the next gen era and how this car, you go through pit stops and what that's done to strategy. So it's constantly evolving. And I'm sure, as always, there is a lot of really smart people trying to understand and quantify these things. But sometimes, as we like to say in racing, this is a game of mysteries. And you can do it. You can spend all the money in the world. You can have the smartest people in the world trying to solve those mysteries. And sometimes they are just mysteries. And that is the beauty of motor racing.
All right, let's talk about Kyle Busch versus Kyle Larson. Who was at fault, Parker?
Well, I think here's my thing. There's two sides to every story, right?
Sure.
And you got to have two players in a situation like this. And I think equally they were involved in this situation. One, Larson obviously is trying to make an honest pass late in the stage, get into the top 10, get some stage points. You have Kyle Busch, who does not want that to happen, right? He has not had the best of races in the last couple of weeks, the last month or so, month and a half. He wants those stage points. Larson goes to side draft, touches Kyle Busch. This sort of ticks Kyle Busch off. He goes down the racetrack and sort of pinches that entry for Kyle Larson. And I think this is the point at which Larson could have said, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm being pinched. I could get loose here. He doesn't. Kyle Busch, on the other hand, is very much pinching him down the corner and knows there's risk in doing that, in that Kyle Larson could get loose, could lose that race car because has such an awkward angle into turn one, which is a hard braking turn, by the way. You downshift. There's a lot happening there as you go off into turn one at St. Louis. So I think when I look at this situation, this is two race car drivers who don't want to let up, who don't want to concede this opportunity for the 10th place at the end of the stage. And therefore they met in an awkward position that had both of them spinning around and hitting the wall. And, I don't think either is innocent. I don't think there's a particular right or wrong in this situation. I just think this is two race car drivers that did not want to concede a position and utilize their race car and the leverage they had with their race car to try and not allow the other to do what they were trying to do. Neither, I think in the time, a lot of people put on Larson. I think Kyle Busch is not innocent in this situation.
The result of all that, Kyle Busch is now below the cut line, which is surprising to say. He joins Joey Logano below the cut line. I mean, two champions below the cut line. So are you surprised by that? And what are your thoughts on where they are as we approach, 10 races left in the regular season?
Well, I think in their situations, you have really two very different situations considering what we saw this weekend. I know you said Ford doesn't quite know why they were fast, but if I'm Joey Logano and I'm in that position and I see the 12 was fast, I see the 2 obviously won the race, the 34 is fast, the 22 had decent speed. I think there's a lot of optimism there, right? That you can have the speed as we go in these summer months, variety of different racetracks, which can propel you into having, a good streak, which can get you in there on points or even put you in a position to go win a race and lock in, right? I think for Kyle Busch, this team needs good days. They need top 10 days like they had at Gateway, and they need to execute on those days because it is no, secret that the Richard Childress racing cars have not had the speed that they even had a year ago, right? And they have been searching, and I've obviously tangentially connected them with our affiliation at Big Machine Racing. And so I see a lot of what's going on there at Richard Childress, and I see the effort level that's going into trying to course correct that organization and to find the speed they need. But when you don't have speed, then you've got to find ways to just grind out good finishes, getting stage points, and just put yourself in the best opportunity possible points wise. And having days like they did at Gateway go away, you just can't do that. And I think Kyle Busch has obviously not been in this position much in his career, where he's got to just find a way to grind up his finishes. He's a guy that, if you just give him a car more often than not that can get to the top 5, he can maybe propel it into a win. And that's something that would just lock him in, and it's no worry to make the playoffs. I think in his current position, they don't quite have the speed to do that. He's got to find a way to not do what he did to Kyle Larson, to take, to have the clear head and to say, hey, I've got a bigger picture here I've got to fight for. I've got to find a way to just grind us into the playoffs. And once we do, if we can continue to work on these race cars and make them faster, then, it can be a better situation on the other side there. But yeah, I think both of them could be in a similar situation, but I don't foresee that they're in a similar situation as we go in the weeks ahead, considering where their race teams are at.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.